This is about a DM who I no longer play under, but have no end of horror stories about. The group was all guys, and normally players would run male characters. I sometimes ran female characters at that table, and so did a few of the other guys, but this DM's behavior applies pretty evenly across all instances of female characters. About once a session, he would ask a random female player character to roll a Constitution saving throw. On a roll that he deemed sufficiently low, he would proclaim, "Boom, you're on your period." A player character with sufficiently low constitution could experience up to a dozen periods, a month. He would dole out a variety of penalties for this. My rogue would get disadvantage on her stealth checks because the creatures can smell your blood. And characters would get disadvantage on persuasion or insight checks because you're too emotional and erratic. This guy was a nightmare DM for so many other reasons, and I just look back on the time playing under him and use it to remind myself of how much I appreciate the DM I currently have. I have a feeling if I tried to analyze this DM's feelings towards the menstruation cycle, I would simply make incomprehensible discomfort noises, so let's just refer this over to Bad Women's Anatomy and move on with our lives. I've played RPGs and tabletop games since I was around 16. We would maybe play once a fortnight through the summer, mainly 3.5 or 5th edition, little sessions where we got to know the rules and clucked around the dungeons with our pre-made characters. Then I came to university and I got into RPGs hardcore. At my peak, I was in 4 sessions a week, running 2 more, plus regular one-shots, playing NPCs for friends, etc. Yes, it completely wrecked me, but it was so much fun. Pretty much all my friends were met through RPGs and the Tabletop Society at uni. I became president of the society, still am now for a second year, though I'm comfortably down to 3 games a week, plus weekend one-shots and NPCing. Unfortunately, you can't play this much without developing a good selection of stories about that guy. So that's the setup. I guess being the only girl in most groups, it made me a little defensive, so I felt the need to properly establish myself, if that makes sense. Anywho, here's a list of fun encounters. They aren't all super gendered, it's just I've been accumulating ones that are, and I thought I'd make a good post subject. Up first, girls are sensitive, so they shouldn't be allowed to run grimdark. I ran a Dark Heresy 1st edition game. I know, I was a fool, and warned ahead of time it would have dark themes, imaginative torture, funky. A few months into the campaign, I set them up with an adorable NPC. She was sent by her older brothers to rob the player characters and would be beaten if she returned empty-handed. They found out that the branding on her arm meant she was used as a special sort of slave. Strangers would barter them for time with her. Props to the party, they protected her, and it helped their characters grow a moral compass. Before they met her, they were intergalactic murder hobos. They weren't subtle in doting her, and an evil gal took notice, captured her, then invited the player characters to a dinner party, where they were placed behind a glass screen and told the girl would be hurt if they didn't share information. The player characters decided to call her bluff, and the girl promptly had her arm dipped in boiling oil. Oof! I did hook her up later with mechandrite so she could bond with the tech priests in the party. After the session ended, the tech priest player was bothered by events, but assured me he enjoyed it. He loved that NPC and was glad she was alive. I would have never killed her, but I wasn't going to tell him that. The rogue trader player, he was pissed off. This guy was that guy, and boy, he was pissed. He explained that I wasn't allowed to hurt NPCs like that. He was the worst. I'm chaotic neutral. I swear, I cut this guy's eyes out for fun kind of player. The group had tortured people, loads of times. There were horrific war injuries all around them. This session wasn't all that new. Long conversation short, I increasingly got the impression that this guy wasn't angry at the events, more that I specifically shouldn't have let them happen. He kept saying he thought I was more sensitive than that. I was too sensitive to let that happen. I should retcon and apologize before more people find out that I'm not as sensitive as they think I am. I knew what he was driving at and tried to push him to state it, acting as though I didn't get what he was talking about, until finally he said, "You know, you shouldn't be doing that sort of thing because you're a girl." Said in the same way one might whisper she has gonorrhea. I floundered and went home apologizing awkwardly. I was a timid person. Our third player ended up having a talk with him, and he came back all excited the next week. Excited to... Oh my god. Sounded like he took all the bad feelings and pushed them into abusing this evil gal, which he took great pleasure in. I had her run away off planet because it was making me sick, which made him moody, but I wanted it over with. Our grimdark campaign continued, by which I mean he abused NPCs and I avoided table conflict by giving him innocent meatbags to punch in a system devoid of abuse which wasn't player caused. Other tidbits from that guy. He knew Warhammer so well that he refused to let me imagine anything outside of canon, even though in Session 0, he and everyone else were told that I'd be imagining a few planets, growing a few gray areas, etc. He didn't allow new NPCs, not well established in canon. His complaining, oh my god, his complaining. If I tried to mention some commander, and he'd bring up a list of characters of that rank, and my new NPC, that wasn't in there. So I researched and included established characters from the Warhammer universe. Cue the most obscene metagaming, as he uses personal details about their lives, which he knows from novels, to get what he wants. I intimidate you by talking about your dead wife. What? His dead wife. She died horribly in X book, which is set before this game. Your character doesn't know that. Doesn't matter. So what do? I describe his wife's death! Me, you have ship X. Him. Can it look like ship Y? I prefer that one, and I want to draw us in it. Sure, but it's a Y-shaped ship. It only has ship X's capabilities. Y ship is 40 times more expensive than X ship. Later on him. Can we use our ship's missile launchers? You don't have those. Ship Y does, and you said we could have ship Y. Plus, I already, drew them on. His metagaming was everything, to the point where he mocked other players for not taking advantage of outside knowledge, bringing up wiki pages and such during sessions to perfectly combat encounters and aggravate other players who were trying to play as though they didn't know the enemy was weak to fire because their character didn't know that. I tried to combat this with homebrew Exonon races whose stats he didn't know. Cue anger when I mess with his beloved established universe. I once canceled a session because I was sick. He rescheduled it without asking me, then sent angry messages when he and the other players met, and I wasn't there. I hadn't seen the messages informing me of the rescheduling because I was in bed. Sick. I was so glad when he left due to scheduling conflicts. This was only my third or so GM experience, and I wasn't very assertive. Boy, I've changed. Nowadays, I tell him to bugger off, personal growth, and all that. It's not me, it's the setting! 4-player game, 3 guys and me, playing 2 female characters, 2 male characters. The GM made NPCs grab my character inappropriately, make comments, refuse me services. I'm all for that kind of setting, but it was actually preventing me from playing the game, let alone enjoying the game. I wanted to know if there was a reason he was singling me out like this, and he said it was a sexist setting. We were told this in Session 0, to be fair. I didn't understand why it was happening to my character and not the other female character, played by a male player. The GM got angry and tried to swing it as me disliking that player and wanting his character to be hurt. I didn't. I just wanted consistency. The setting was also warned to be really racist, but there was nothing against the character of color. I obviously didn't bring this up. It would be spun as me wanting racist things to happen. Mini analysis. As long as everyone's comfortable with it, having a setting with discrimination is okay, but you can't use it as a way to discriminate against people in real life. I guarantee this guy did this only so he could be racist against people of color in his games and sexist against women in his games, not so he could create interesting conflict or stories. Anyway, moving on. No, let me roll for you. Is this the titular tale? It might be. There was a new that guy on the block. He joined the society. I welcomed him, as I do for everyone. He was completely new to RPGs. A friend ran a quick wushu game for him, our classic move for total noobs, and I had free time, so I partook. The system lets you describe what you do and rewards adding details. It's a really fun, storytelling-heavy, mechanically light system. His character was obscenely overpowered. His details were just to give himself new superpowers, even when we tried to nerf to let other people be involved. There's someone to rescue in a tower of a castle, him. I use my dragon wings to fly above the castle and rip it apart with magic and carry the tower off with the prisoner inside. Done. There were 7 people in this game. An unspoken rule is that you don't make it all about you when your power is theoretically limitless. It's very common to add obstruction details to make the storytelling more fun. Another player, who's trying to make it a good experience for everyone, unfortunately, there is a force field of some sort over the gardens, which we need to deactivate. Then you can get through. Him. It's okay, I have magic claws which can rip it open. That would alert the guard, who we'd have to fight. No, I have magical stealth skills, so they won't be alerted. They'll realize when it goes down. No, I use dragon magic to send them all to sleep for a day, and nothing can wake them. If you implied that he should let someone else have a go, it just led to, I'm playing the game, stop limiting my character. Rinse and repeat for 2 hours. Props to the GM for keeping it together. I'd been a player in a Pathfinder game for over a year. It ran for another year after this. Our weekly session began as this Wushu game ended. Cue that guy deciding to walk in to spectate. Bit weird, we have several rooms and at any one time a couple of games running with a few rooms empty so people can RPG in peace without people coming in distracting them. I'd explained this to him when he joined, but well. Long story short, he decided to sit next to me and for a couple of hours told me how to play. I explained that I was both playing a character whom I'd played for over a year and literally the president of the society. I knew what I was doing. He was having none of this though. Also, he had never played the system, or any system other than the game he had just finished. Okay, now roll a d20. I know, I've been playing this game for a year. I roll. Good job, now add your strength score. No, I need to add these numbers. She got 23. No, I got an 18. That's 18 damage. No, it's 18 to hit. Now I have to roll damage. I know. He rolls a d20. 14. I roll my d12. That's 11 damage. Why did you do so much less damage? This went on for so long. At one point, I cocked a dice. 2 tables pushed together, a little indent between the two. It happens sometimes. It landed wonky, so I had to re-roll. So he tried to show me how to roll properly. We were role-playing in the game, but he was pissy that I wasn't listening to him as he rolled dice over the party. As we tried to talk to NPCs, he tried to take my hand to show me how to roll the dice. I just smiled awkwardly. The GM and I are good friends, but we were both very quiet and not good at personal conflict, so tried to act as though this wasn't happening. I really don't blame the GM. This clearly bothered him a lot, and he checked I was okay after. I eventually just let the dude roll and had to tell him what dice to use because when I tried to pick them up myself, he'd, oh, whoops, we tried to pick them up at the same time, and our hands touched. And it made me really uncomfortable. I think he thought I was flirting. It made me not want to participate, but when I was quiet, he'd either try to narrate my character for me, which can bugger right off, or wanted to chat, no matter how many times I told him I was trying to listen to the game. I know he never mentioned it was because I was a girl, but there were 4 others around that table, one of whom was new, and I was actively teaching the game, and he greeted me as president. I don't know why else he would have singled me out other than gender. That one put me off of socializing for a little while. All girls play Tyranids and Tau and Necrons and Chaos. Small one, for general tabletops. I rarely play a game of Warhammer where someone doesn't wander in and make the comment, oh, she's playing Space Marines. All girls play Space Marines. Literally, doesn't matter which of my armies I'm playing. I also commonly hear the, oh, you're playing Barbarian, Bard, Halfling, Elf, Magic User, a male character, female character. Such a typical girl. How does that even work? Semi-relevant, but this one applies to Overwatch too. Doesn't matter what hero you're playing, it's likely that someone will observe that you're such a typical girl for picking them. You're playing literally any MTG color. All girls play whatever MTG color the girl is playing. Why are girls all the same? Oh, not like that. Like this. The most frequent of bothersome interactions. I'm perfectly capable of building a character and of playing a character. If I want help, I'm capable of asking for it. Myself. But oh boy, the number of times I've been in session 0 in a group as the only girl and guess who gets singled out to be shown how she should be building the character, even when there are other new players. A lot of my friends were guilty of this, and when I pointed it out, most said they were trying to help and make me feel included. Heads up that if you want someone to feel included, don't do something which explicitly makes them feel singled out. The implication that I don't know what I'm doing after all this time rubs something awful even though I know it often comes from a place of help. Mini analysis. I am totally guilty of this when I am DMing, especially when I'm playing with new players. I've played almost exclusively with new players my entire D&D career, and yeah, when I'm over tutorializing, it can be helpful, but also it can be very unhelpful, especially after you've played for an extended period of time. It is a habit that we get into, and it's something that we, as DMs, need to work on if we get into that habit. I found the best way to do this, at least for me, is to focus in on my own actions when I'm playing the game. When I'm playing as my creatures, as my bosses, focus in on that, rather than me hyperfixating on the actions taken by my players, leading to me sometimes over-tutorializing. Mini analysis over. This usually happens when I'm trying to make something funky. Like, yes, I know the spell combination isn't optimal, but it's character accurate, and this is a one-shot, so scram! I don't hear you correcting anybody else's imperfect builds. Honestly, the number of times this has happened has made me really resistant to actual helpfulness. I really wish it could just stop. Every post in this sub needs the token story. Less of a fun story, but to summarize it, I was the only female player in a 5-man group. 2 of them had female characters. Myself and the other 2 guys were playing men, male GM. It was a one-shot, which could turn into more. Surprisingly, it didn't. We were summoned to the BBEG's location by letter, but first we decided to go to a seedy bar to find a bounty hunter, who we thought could give us information, our only lead, other than the letter. We get grabbed and shoved into a van. Okay, didn't question how we got from an underground bar in a tunnel system to a van on the street, but let's roll with it. When we get to the mystery location, the place we were summoned to, they open the doors, and while the 3 men were trussed up, the DM describes the horrid things the guards are doing to the 2 women. Oh boy. As players, we are pissed off. At first, due to the obvious railroading to get us to this place, he could have just had the bounty hunter tell us to go here and cut off our other options instead of literally carrying us there. But then, we were all grossed out by what he was describing. The 2 players of the female characters were really uncomfortable, and one made the mistake of saying it felt like they were being punished for playing women. The GM got really angry. He insisted it was his world, and we should let him do what he wants. Then he came out with this lovely phrase. "It can't be sexist. It would be if I had her." And he pointed at me. Lovely. He ended up getting really angry and storming off. One of his friends came to get his bag, and I haven't seen him around since. Glorious. Telling me what to do. Classic female DM. I ran a one-shot for 4 noobs. 2 of them were lovely. They're regulars in games I help run. The other 2, not so much. The 2 dickbags weren't keen on me telling them what was happening. A DM controlling the world? Unheard of. It was a short campaign over the course of 1 week in-game. They had a Saturday deadline when an event was happening in their magical town, and a few other things happening on particular days. They started in the town on the Sunday before. I advised them to pay attention to when things were scheduled to happen, aka like market day is Wednesday, you could only get supplies on that day. This town's shops only open on this day, and it's the place where you can get this thing. This person is available to meet on Tuesdays. You only have to travel to 1 town per day in this little sandbox world. It was an idea I'd been toying with. It meant they had to choose plot routes because things were happening at the same time, so they had to choose sides, and lots was happening, so they could decide what they wanted to achieve in the time that they had. Save the Countess's life, help the Thieves Guild steal the crown jewels, deal with the bandits attacking the farms. I told the party this ahead of time. It was a 3-hour session. They decided they'd play that way and pick story options as I set them out. When the game started, these 2 decided that was stupid, and things happened on days they wanted them to happen. We want to go to the meeting with the king. You could have gone to it yesterday. You went to meet the Thieves Guild instead. Well, can we just go now? Fine, it'll take a day to set up another meeting, and you can do something else today. You won't have any days left after that. Okay, we go now. The guards stop you from going in. There are loads of other things happening today that you can do. We break in. We want to talk to him. Then we can go tell the Thieves Guild what his plans are. If you do that, you'll be arrested. They break into the king's chambers. They get arrested. I had them released because the 2 nice players were keen to do the plots I'd actually set out. They finished the Thieves Guild questline that they'd started, and it was fine. The 2 decided to have a good complaining session in our one-shot group chat afterwards, ironically, just below where they'd agreed to do the game the way I explained. Maybe they forgot I was in there as well as the other players, or maybe they wanted me to see this. Some comments were along the lines of, I mean, I've heard what these female DMs are like. They're always like this. It's like a control thing. They mused about whether it was because I'm ugly or not getting sex, and because I was and used to getting my own way. Try that for duality of character. Me being on my period was mentioned a bunch too. I deleted the whole chat and haven't seen them since. Oh well. I've replayed that little one-shot world a few times, including with those 2 nice players. It's really fun. They apologized a load, but they did nothing wrong. Possible side note, I'm the only female friend of a lot of guys I meet through playing. Many of these guys are often raised on a steady diet of porn and anime. So of course, if they see a girl, fancy her, then it's her job to indulge them. Cue tantrums if she doesn't. Mini analysis 3, not about the last part. That was just blatantly awful, but about the whole players not going along with what the DM has prepared sort of thing. Look, of course a DM needs to offer a lot of choice for players. Having choice and freedom of choice is a big part of why people play D&D. However, at the same time, DMs have a certain amount prepped. Like, for example, if you're playing Curse of Strahd, you can't refuse to go to Barovia. It's the whole point of playing the module. It's like a social contract between DMs and players. Alright, mini analysis over, moving on. A guy screamed at me and left the game because my character flirted with an NPC? I was Bard. I had mythic leadership, you get it. I was also a literal book with appearance over 30. The meme was that she slept with everyone. How, you ask? Well, wouldn't you like to know? Turns out, this guy joined to get close to me, then insisted that I was only playing the character like that, a character I'd had for over a year at that point, to mock him and his feelings for me. He left very quickly, but not before the DM had made a whole arc about the new player's backstory to properly welcome him to the group, leaving us awkwardly in a strange place with no link to anything happening there. Make your character pay attention to me! Super fun. The guy here was not a good fit for RPGing in general. He openly does not enjoy the activity. God knows why he wanted to play, but he did. He played lol so random characters and played on his phone when he wasn't interested in what was happening. He had a love interest, a tall, beautiful elf, inexplicably enamored with his crap-covered quote-unquote cleric. When he left, we decided his god had abandoned him for these shenanigans. She was an unsubtle attempt by the DM to make the player interested in events, and it worked for a session or two until he got bored of following plot and pushed her off a cliff. Yeah, that sort of player. I had joined this campaign a couple of sessions before she was introduced and saw the worst of his playing. He left maybe 6 after the love interest affair. She survived the fall, but didn't want anything more to do with us. Oh, how shocking. He vaguely said he wanted to get her back, rolled a dice, it was like a 14 or something. He didn't say what he was doing or rolling for and went back to his phone when we kept moving the session on without her. He decided a couple sessions later that I was his new love interest, and in maybe the 5 times a session where he would look up from his phone and get involved with the game, he would announce things that our characters were doing together. GM. Alright guys, what are you doing in your downtime? Oh, me and OP are going into the forest. No, I'm going to the library to read up on plot-relevant thing. You can come do that if you want. Ha! Well, I pick you up and carry you there. No. He was turned off of the game whenever he had to roll something, so I just said if he wanted to try, he could roll CMB, and he said, nah, and went back to his phone. My character wanted nothing to do with him, though made regular jokes about using him for scientific study, mainly as a way to get around the creepiness by turning it into a joke. In combat, he would try to hit me by accident, obviously stating his intended target out of character. When I called him out, he said that counted as metagaming. I asked him why he wouldn't leave my character alone. There aren't any other girls here, was the answer. Yeah, I was glad when he left. Date my character! I rolled a nat 20! My group met the setting's queen, one with -2 charisma, and this guy decided he wanted to seduce her. I was mid-scene setting when he interrupted me. I rolled a nat 20. For what? To get her to date me. She hasn't even greeted you yet. But I rolled a nat 20. What is your character doing? Seducing her. He just laughed off the encounter when the rest of the party told him to drop it. For the next few sessions, he complained about me railroading by not accepting the role. He's quite nice now, not so much back then. This is a simple one. I ran a one-shot, it went fine. One player spent the whole time, though, staring at my chest. He did the whole stare around the room when I looked at him as though he wasn't doing it. I mean, like, eye contact to boob staring ratio is maybe a 1 to 10? A friend suggested I dress less revealing in the future. I was wearing a jumper. It's not like I can take them off and put them somewhere. Sure, just sit down and start playing. Don't ask her anything. I may be a tiny bit to blame for this guy's feelings, but only a tiny bit. We kissed at a party when we only knew each other through an esports team, but this was part of a party game where I kissed like a dozen other people, and most of the rest of the team did too. He definitely knew this is why I was doing it before we kissed. Your girl here supports informed consent. He then told me that I had taken his first kiss, and a few days later, he told me of his undying love. This was an issue. He had never had a female friend. Eventually, he and I talked out his feelings, and turns out he had his first crush and freaked out. Unfortunately, before we talked it out, he decided to forcibly insert himself into my life. He joined my sports team, found out where I studied, and bumped into me a whole bunch, and he decided he wanted to join a long-term Pathfinder campaign I played in. This means he printed out a character sheet, filled it out, and just sat down. I distinctly remember the GM's face as he asked, "Oh, so you'd like to join us?" Okay. That poor GM, he put up with a lot of crap. This guy was not a good fit for the campaign. He couldn't conceive of not being the main character, to the point where he would narrate NPCs and other characters' reactions to him. GM, a woman comes down from the sky towards you. She seems to float on air as she looks at each of your faces. She's immediately scared of me as she sees my sword. No, she doesn't seem scared. She's hiding her fear. Fine, she admires me. So anyway, and the story would move on. It really bugged all of us, but we would try to make the best of it. This dude, though, damn, he would bring his laptop and Skype his friends, play first-person shooters when he wasn't directly involved in the game. He was the typical, "Oh, tell me when it's my turn" kind of player. And when his turn rocked around, it would be time for him to explain how the scene was actually all about him, when no, he had a chance to be involved when we were role-playing, and he was playing Overwatch. He assumed his character was just standing silently in the back. He would turn up 1 to 2 hours late to our regular sessions. One time, he messaged saying he would be half an hour late, then messaged at the end of the 4-hour session that he decided not to come at all because he wanted to make food. He sent us food pics and everything. That was his main blessing. He rarely showed up. I feel awful, inadvertently, bringing that guy into that formerly lovely campaign. You can do no wrong. This one made my group resent me. It sucked. An early campaign I was a player in, I genuinely can't remember what class my character was, back in the day of the pre-made characters. She was essentially a human warrior, though, and she got everything. I found an amazing axe, which gave me surprisingly big bonuses. My min damage was our fighter's max damage. We went to find a smith to get armor, and he gave me discounts because he knew my father or something. So I had the best armor, special magic armor, which gave me no debuffs. The GM fudged numbers for me too. I rarely got hit, like ever. I felt like around 50% of the shots aimed at me hit one below my AC. Then again, shots were rarely ever aimed at me at all. I remember one fight between the GM and a player stemming from an 18 to hit nothing. But my 15 to hit the same enemy hit the same enemy. He blagged something about weapon type and positioning, but honestly, he would do it all the time. I swear, he didn't give things hit points at all. He just waited until I landed a hit, then described what a good job I'd done killing it, though no one else had participated. The worst part was that when I joined another group with one of the same players, he talked smack about how I demanded preferential treatment and got whatever I wanted. He thought I was manipulative and thought I was fudging numbers too. It took ages to get that group to trust me as a player, though I can appreciate his frustration. Character equals person? As it really says, a guy insisted that my sexy book lover spending her free time going off to find an attractive bibliophile, aka other book lover, was more morally abhorrent than murder, and decided that it meant I was an immoral person. He happily killed people in character, but tried to tell a guard that I was seeing. Ha, she's just doing this because she's covering for being in real life. He tried so hard to joke with the table, who were having none of it. I told him where he could shove his opinions, and the table agreed. He left because he didn't have time for RPGs. A year before, I would have awkwardly apologized and changed my character's actions to avoid conflict. But now, I do not hesitate to point out people being assholes. That, kids, is called character development. What few female characters there are get killed. I had a DM who made only 1/10 of the NPCs female, if that, and invariably, all of them got murdered, kidnapped to motivate the party or important male NPCs. I was the only girl in the party, and it was really bothering me that the only time a woman ever came into the story, it was because their father, pimp, husband asked us for help saving, avenging, protecting her. Those same male characters had full stories and relationships with the party and world. I took the DM aside and explained it made me uncomfortable and used examples from his sessions. He never had a female character pass the sexy lamp test. Any woman who could be replaced with a sexy lamp. If a quest involved a woman, their involvement boiled down to, he stole my sexy lamp, get it back. He smashed my sexy lamp, avenge it. Male NPCs interacted with women, but it was either, he's a lovely guy, look how he cares for his sexy lamp, or he's such a bad guy, look at all these sexy lamps he kills. I explained this, and the DM thought for a while and agreed, and he said he struggled with writing female characters. The next arc had far more interesting women to interact with, and he asked for feedback. Myself and the other players enjoyed it more. It was nice. Not a horror story in the end. It's just nice to think that some bad situations don't have to be bad. Most people are willing to improve themselves. Plus, I'm more assertive. Good times all around. A couple of guys from the other stories have since been reformed, I guess. I've since been helping them, view women as people, learn how to act in social situations too, though I've got to be careful to not let myself become obligated. Most of them came to uni and have growing to do. I'm proud of how far they've come though. I'd like to finish by clarifying that I've played games near constantly for the last 4 years. I've met so many good friends. I've played dozens of campaigns with hundreds of people. Sure, when they're put together, these stories seem daunting, but they're really the small minority of cases. I've cultivated a good group and society which doesn't put up with this behavior, so most bad times are short-lived. Still though, this might be fun reading. I'll edit if I think of more. Most people are good people. Bad people though? They're entertaining. There is already so much here to begin with, but I think we have an overall message here. All of these stories come from a college D&D group, and I think college D&D groups and high school D&D groups, I think those groups are awesome. They're going to be the way a lot of people start playing this game and getting into this hobby of TTRPGs, and I think that is awesome. It's amazing. However, there is a serious problem that I see at a lot of high school and college D&D clubs. They don't regulate their tables and don't kick out problem players. It's similar to what happens at conventions. A lot of conventions too have this everyone is welcome rule, and that is great. You should welcome everyone at the table. But if they're proving to ruin the experience for other players when they're actually playing the game, then it's a serious problem. You need to take that player aside, and if they don't change, you need to stop them from ruining the game for the players in your club, society, group, whatever. Obviously, for the first few stories, this was not happening, and that meant that this DM, or player, she was both, had to deal with a lot of crap. Luckily, looks like she's made a few changes to how she views these situations and how she, as now the president of the club, congratulations, runs this little society. So that is great, good for her, and I think a lot of people need to learn from this. Be welcoming to the people who join your group. This game was made to be played after all, but if they prove to ruin the experience for others, then take them aside, and if they don't change, they gotta go. And yeah, that is where we are going to end today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed this particularly long episode, then please do leave a like. We worked really hard on this one, and I really enjoyed reading this one, so I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you guys want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Tabletop Tavern Tips series, where we cover D&D tips for both DMs and players, old and new. Check that out in the cards, and while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.